Welcome to the Work the System podcast, where we help entrepreneurs make more and work less using systems. And I'm your host, Josh Fonger. And today we have a special guest. We've got Matthew Dairman. Dr. Matthew Dairman is the founder, sole owner, and visionary of 1 Foot, 2 Foot, the first podiatry practice to include a comfort shoe store and spa under one roof. He has grown his multi-million-dollar company to 3 full-time locations, 6 physicians, and 40 support staff. Matthew loves to share his often different vision of podiatry and is nationally recognized for his expertise in foot surgery, practice management, office culture, and branding. He is a pioneer in ancillary integration of retail and spa services and I can't even pronounce that word. Podiatric, is that right, Matthew?
Yes, that is correct.
Podiatric practices, and has extensive experience in exponential practice growth strategies. As much as Matthew enjoys growing businesses, he stresses the importance of giving back and has created the Be a Goody Two Shoes program that in part donates $1 for every patient visit to charities his team selects at the beginning of each year. All right, Matthew, so I'm really looking forward to diving into what you've done in the podiatry field. And since you were a previous client of mine, just hearing about the systems you put into place. Before we dive into all of that, how did you get into this line of work? So give us the backstory.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity and a great honor. I've enjoyed the coaching process and working with you. So the invite was a surprise and an honor. So thank you for having me. Getting into podiatry was kind of a long story, but I'll shorten it. I was halfway through a master's degree in epidemiology and looking to figure out what to do with my life. And sitting in front of a computer didn't seem to work. And I wanted to help people. And I was looked at all the different branches of medicine out there. And podiatry seemed to just hold a nice ring to it because I was able to do dermatology, radiology, surgery with less stress because it's a foot and ankle. And then that allowed me to expand on my business mindset of growing a small business and then ultimately the enterprise that we have. So it's really been a wonderful ride.
Yeah, and you definitely have done it differently than most in terms of your multiple locations. You got the retail, you got the spa, and so that's it's more complex than the standard podiatry practice, I'm assuming.
Yeah. When I had originated the concept in med school that I wanted to have a not only a full scope practice, but to have a place where people can get safe pedicures, and people, all the docs, my attendings, and everybody would say, "Why do you want to give pedicures?" I said, "I don't. I just want a safe place for my patients to go." And then I said, "I want a shoe store too." And they're like, "Why do you want to sell shoes?" I'm like, "I don't necessarily want to sell shoes. I want a place where my patients can go to get the right shoes. So why not put it under one roof?" Mm-hmm. And sure enough, years later, we've been doing it, and others are following suit with spas and shoe stores cropping up all over the country.
That's very interesting. So kind of innovation right there. So let's dive into the past. Okay. So before we started working together, I'm assuming there was some reason why you wanted to sign up for the program and get involved with building systems. Was there some triggering event that happened?
Kind of. I'm an avid reader, so I read for personal, I read for business, all nonfiction stuff. And I was at a point in my career where practice was good, but the systems in place weren't quite running as smoothly as I wanted. I had my own personal systems, but the business itself, the staff, how they were running, specifically my administrator, was just overwhelmed with stuff. And I came across the Work the System book, read it, clicked automatically because I do think in systems. And it was like, yes, this is exactly it. I don't want to whack any moles anymore. I want to kill them before they grow. And I thought this would be perfect for my administrator, Tink, to really dive into and learn how I kind of think, because it was more or less talking to me. And so in that process of trying to figure out, how do we institute more systems? How do we get the staff more engaged and involved? That's where we really kind of dug in and found the coaching program that you guys offered, and that's where we linked up.
So how did that work? Because it sounded like she thought it was a good idea, but she wasn't able to actually put it in action. Did she make time for it, or do you change your job description, or how did you actually make that transition?
Well, she made time for it, but what we both did was we kind of assigned individuals in the practice to be our backups, to be our projects managers. So I've got one on the clinical side, and then she has one, a person we identified. So we use the Kolbe assessments in our practice when we hire people. It's a way that we can assess what their strengths are. You know, if you're a fact finder, a follow through, a quick start, or an implementer. So when you're looking for someone like a projects manager, you want someone with a lot of follow through, because those are the ones that can really put together the system in stages and see it through. So we identified one person in our organization who was perfect. She was like a 9 follow through, and she was already pretty much a step below where Tink was. So she responded or reported to Tink as it was. So she was just the perfect person to do it. So between Tink and I doing kind of the coaching aspects of it and involving our project manager, Mel, in the process, we were able to really get things going.
Okay. And for those who don't know, maybe I glossed over, you do have a sizable staff, right? So it's 40 people or so?
Between 40 and 50.
Okay. And then multiple locations. And so
Yep.
for organizations that big, you can't just hope it's going to get done. You do need to actually be pretty structured and organized about that. So what was it like trying to take a system, you know, maybe the way you greet someone at the front door, the way you process a bill, and keep it consistent across multiple locations? Was that a challenge?
Very much so, because of the 3 offices that we have, I only go to 2. So there's one office I rarely, if ever, go to. So me being the one to implement any systems is very difficult. My administrator, my project manager, they can go occasionally, but it's not like an easy way of doing it. So we needed to find a way to get the systems out there so that people would understand what they were, and a nice, consistent place to do it. We looked at all different options, and we ultimately settled on creating a hub or an intranet for the organization, and we did it with Google. So as we had already had our Google Gmail, and we did everything on sheets and documents. So it's kind of the perfect follow through for that, was to create an intranet with Google Sites. And on that, we're able to put every system, we're able to organize it, easy access. So whether an individual employee is at home or at work, they have access to all the tools they need.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I like how you chose a solution that kind of integrated with everything else. Oftentimes people pick and choose 15 different pieces of technology and try to duct tape them together. But if you just have one, that does make it easier. So what about the team? So you get started, and I'm assuming people on the team, not everybody was bought into it, maybe not the physicians entirely. Did you have to push hard to make them stick with it, or what happened?
It's a gradual process, and I would say that not everybody still sticks with the systems that we created, but at least we have them, and I can always go back to them and point out, no, this is how we do it. This is what we do. You know, so one of the systems is writing thank you notes to our patients. For any new patient we see, we want to write a thank you note because it's a privilege to see them. And I try to do it with every new patient that comes through the door. And I want my associate doctors to do exactly the same, because it's just polite. It's good practice, and it stimulates happiness. So when I see that they are doing it, it's great. When they're not, I can easily pull up the system on the hub and say, this is what we really want to do. This is why we want to do it. And I expect you to do it. But again, you can't necessarily rely on them consistently doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably also worth mentioning some nuances. So if you are working with a bunch of physicians, a higher level staff, a little bit more challenging to make them follow certain things like that,
Yes.
especially in your practice, because we started off when you were already 3 locations in, whereas maybe a new recruit, a new assistant, a new employee, a lot more control maybe over someone like that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have some older docs, we have some younger docs, and it's just not easy necessarily. And most doctors in general have some form of ego of some sort. I love them all. And you know, you have to work with everybody that you have, so you find their real strengths and try to play to those strengths. But not everybody's just going to follow, and you just have to, as a leader, I've learned I have to just kind of pick the battles, figure out which ones are worth fighting. But ultimately, you know, it's the war you want to win.
Right. So with this hub, how many systems do you have in there right now? Is there a certain number you're trying to hit, or is it?
Oh no, I was thinking about that before. Uh, Lord knows, I think we must have over 200 variations of systems and protocols and stuff. If you include all the patient education, because everything's on there, all of our handouts that we give to patients, the way we dispense a certain product, it's all just there. So I should go back and really count that, but it's rather enormous.
So for those of you who have small companies, let's say 5 employees, so this is where you want to be. Because I'm assuming, Matthew, that people aren't asking you questions about all those things because they know they're there, and you're not getting interrupted 100 times a day about where is this form or where is that thing, because it's already
It,
there.
it is it is definitely cut down on that for myself, for my administrator, and people know where to go. The first page on the hub actually has our organizational chart. So if there's a new employee, they know exactly who they report to. And if that doesn't work, who to report to beyond that. And we have our office manual is linked there, our strategic objective and our operating principles. That game changer for work, the system was creating that strategic objective and operating principles. You might remember doing it with me, and it was a bear to do, but it's been fantastic.
That's good. Well, it seems simple, right? Just a single page for the strategic objective, but the thought and the energy goes into it, and then when you release it, you want it to be right, and so it does take some time to get that done. Well,
Yeah.
that's good. I'm glad you're still using that.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. It's
so
one thing to have core values, but when you start putting, it's more like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of your practice, as opposed to just the standard core values. And yeah, that's actually when we created the operating principles, that's when I recognized one of the real talents of one of my docs, because he too is a follow through, and he's able to put pieces of puzzles together like I've never seen before. And he was able to take the operating principles and separate them so that there's basically 4 principles for each of our motto, which is to be a limb specialist, to learn, always be learning, always be impactful, always be mindful, and always be better today than you were yesterday. And he was able to take the operating principles that we collectively wrote and organize them so that they fit nicely into one of those 4 LIMB kind of categories. And it was wonderful.
so what does your team think now? I mean, are they excited about the future? Or they think the culture is more defined and refined, or how would you describe it?
I think we're more on the same page than we were, which is nice. I think we're definitely heading in the right direction. We always have a ways to go. That's kind of the fun part of a practice, is always building it, making it better. Healthcare is always changing, so trying to step ahead of the curve is always a challenge. And having all the systems in place and creating new systems as we go just helps us get better as we go forward.
So what's the next step for you now? Now that you kind of have the structure in place, and we were talking a little bit offline before this started. I mean, is the next step to sell, to open in new locations? Maybe you can't say, but what are you going to do now that you have this structure in place?
Create more structure. We have so many systems now that we really have to take a step back and really organize it. So I think there was a book called Predictable Success that talks about kind of the wave of every business that it goes through. And we were in whitewater for a while, and putting the systems in place gets you into that predictable success. But then you have too many, and then they become a little convoluted, and then you end up in treadmill. So you have to kind of dial back. So we're in that process now of kind of dialing back a little bit on them, really organizing what we have to make sure that if we do expand, which we expect to expand, whether we do it with ourselves or through another organization, we'll be able to use the processes that we've put in place. So it's kind of like a set and go, set and go, set and go, and everybody will be on the same page.
So what is the stress level like in your office now? Is it more stressful than it was before, or do you feel like people are more calm and they know what to do?
It depends on the day, I have to be honest, because there are if things run smoothly and patients show up, and it's really patient driven, and it's how the schedule is run. And that's one of the systems we're really honing in on. I actually brought in another person to help us with the efficiencies of patient flow, to make sure we're running on time, to make sure that if patients don't show up on time, how we handle that, to really streamline those processes. So if everybody's scheduled appropriately and the day goes smoothly, we're all having a great time. We call it 1 foot, 2 foot, because it's just a fun place to be. And we want it to be that way. There are the days that it just gets stressed.
Mhm.
You know, every leader, I think, wants to work less and make more. What I find is that the work that I'm doing now, I don't mind doing. In fact, I enjoy it. So I'm not necessarily working less, but that's a choice that I've made. And I like that choice. So I think more what leaders are after is having the opportunity to do it, not so much the I'm going to do it. Just like when I say someday I'm going to retire, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to just retire. It means I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. And a lot of people I work with, that's the whole thing is they want to have more control over their business, but they actually enjoy the work. So they're not necessarily trying to retire tomorrow.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun little bonus. You know, I
Yes.
expected I'd put all these things in place and want to work less. And reality is I enjoy what I do.
Right. And you enjoy it more when there's less moles popping up. I think
Yes.
that's also helpful.
I love that analogy. I use it all the time.
So what, I mean, you do some coaching as well for podiatry practices. What do you usually coach them through? Because I mean, you're learning all this stuff and you're applying it and you've kind of built your own little workshop. Are they having the same kind of problems they used to have, or what kind of problems do they have?
Yeah, that's really the fun part. So I work with a company called Foot and Ankle Business Innovations. It was created by a well-known podiatrist, Lowell Wild Jr., and it was created about 6 years ago. And it was basically a place where podiatrists can go to learn how to create better patient care and profit at the same time. It's more of an entrepreneurial kind of thing. And again, kind of like reading Work the System, it was just all the stuff that I was doing, and nobody was laughing at me for doing it. They were asking how I was doing it.
Mhm.
And within 2 or 3 years or so, they invited me as the instructor, one of their instructors, to do it. So now we have a mastermind group. We meet 3 times a year, and then a 4th time at an annual event. And we go through all the issues that are ongoing in your typical podiatry practice. And we have doctors from single practitioner, older, who are looking for exit strategies, to young startup single docs who are looking to grow the practice. We have practices that are multi-million dollar practices, even bigger than mine, trying to figure out, what the next step is. They're all having the same problems in one form or another. The world has seen pretty much all of the same problems, and there's answers out there. You just have to know where to get those answers. So going through things like Work the System have put me in a position where I can pass on a lot of the knowledge of the mistakes that I've made, and the successes that I've had. And it's transformational for me, but hopefully more so for the attendees of the FABI system.
Well, that's great that you're giving back. And I'm sure that most people, they learn things and then they forget them. And it sounds like in your case, you're learning them and there's at least a framework of what you all did to make that so successful.
Well, there's a mantra that we always learn in residency. It's see one, do one, teach one, right? So I don't know if that goes beyond podiatry or medicine in general, but that's always what we do. So we train our staff to do it the same way. You see it, you do it, and then you teach it. And the more you teach it, the better you get at it, and then the more you learn. So it's a great system.
I like that. So I wanted to ask you about the putting all the services under one roof, because that's an interesting strategy, and I'm wondering if that would work with other industries. So what have you found with the kind of the pros and cons of taking 3, shoe store, but the spa services and the podiatry all under one roof?
So the way we designed it was so that the shoe store and the spa were not really set to be profit centers. So when people come to me and they ask, oh, I want to open a spa, how do I do it? Or I want to open a shoe store, what's the first step? I ask them what their intention is with it. And if their intention is, I'm looking for another profit center, I try to steer them away because it's not necessarily what they think it is. What it is, though, is it's a wonderful referral source. It's a wonderful place for my patients to get services that they otherwise could not easily find in our area. So though I may not be making a lot of money on it, in fact, on the SPA, I basically break even, but I employ 5 people, gainfully employed, happily employed, and I provide a service that nobody else does. And if they happen to send over a new patient, it's great. And so it's hard to quantify when you have those types of businesses, because when you're looking at other organizations and they're trying to figure out where the profit is and they don't want things that aren't profitable, you have to be able to really find why it's profitable. And in this case, it's just keeping us first in mind for foot and ankle care. So if you're buying shoes, you're thinking about your feet, you come to us. If you're getting a pedicure, you think about your feet, you're already there.
That's right. Okay, so you can really own the knowledge or the mental space in people's
Yep.
minds in your area, that anything involving feet, this is where you go. And that's a good, it's kind of like a part of your marketing budget, I suppose, right?
We keep everything separate, and everything runs as its individual business. So it's kind of fun to say, I own 3 businesses, 4 businesses, all this stuff. But for the most part, it's a nice cross marketing reference. Everything flows from one to another, and we've just have gotten more into clinical trials now too, which is a big boon for us to provide even additional services to people who necessarily can't afford certain healthcare things, and we can provide it through a clinical trial. So that the more you grow, the more recognition you get. The more recognition, the more opportunities come. The more opportunities come, the more you can serve.
That's very neat. And I think what you've really done in your marketplace is distinguish yourself from the standard podiatry practices, and so that you actually have some PR buzz associated with it as well, which I think is cool.
I've tried. There's always competition. There's always people trying to either replicate or do something that would disrupt what we're doing. But we have a very clear mission. That's to just serve our community the best that we possibly can and have fun doing it.
Have your customers noticed a difference over the last few years when you started to put these systems into place, or is it all behind the scenes and they didn't really know a difference?
I think a lot of it's behind the scenes because they're internal systems. They're how we greet a patient. We've always gotten compliments on our service, but I would say they're more consistent now that the staff is more in line with the strategic objective and operating principles.
Mm-hmm. The phrase that Sam and I like to say is dysfunction is gold. And usually when I work with companies, they're really, really dysfunctional, and they couldn't have gotten to 3 locations. They're like 1 location dysfunctional. But when you came to me and you had these 3 locations, they're all humming along pretty good. I realized that it was going to be more about finding and fine tuning and the measurements you've done now, and really solidifying that, because a lot of the stuff you got figured out when we first started working together.
Yeah, I like to say we're in a good place. We're in a better place since working with you. And again, I'm thankful for that because it definitely put another tool in my box. And you can never have too many tools if it's going to improve patient care, if it's going to improve employee satisfaction, or if it's just going to improve the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, good. Well, Matthew, I really appreciate you taking your Friday afternoon before a long weekend to share your experience with putting systems into place. This is really useful for me. Hopefully for those watching, just to kind of hear about the experience. And sometimes it's dramatic, and sometimes it's just simple framework, simple results, and a more fun work environment for for the owner.
Absolutely.
Which is great. Well, good. Well, Matthew, again, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for watching the podcast today. Check us out next week. We'll have another interview either with a previous client of mine or a business expert, sharing with you some kind of tip, trick, secret, some way so you can make more and work less with systems. And if you would like a copy of Sam Carpenter's book right there behind me, hopefully I'll get it signed. Make sure to leave us a review on wherever you're watching or listening to this. leave a little review, send us a picture of that review to info@workthesystem.com, and we'll be drawing out one name a week and mailing you a copy of the book. All right, thanks everybody.